Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've actually done this a couple times on the channel, but I just felt like doing one of these videos. So this is from the 5th of July. It turns out that the church puts on a fireworks show, or they host a fireworks show at the visitor center, and we're going to make this a family tradition. It's great because it's the day after the 4th of July, so you get to do your regular fireworks and watch some other show, and then the next day you can come here and catch a second fireworks show. But so yesterday I was invited by the family that owns the Rush Creek church site. It's private property, but this is the place where Zion's camp was, and he had the victims of the cholera that were buried at this location. And of course, I forgot to bring my GoPro. So, but we talked, and I'm going to go back next week, and then I'm going to post that video on my other channel, Explore Church Sites. And I'm probably going to post it here too, because I've decided with that channel, I'm not going to do no commentary anymore. I am going to do commentary. I think it probably makes it just a little bit more interesting to watch. And it's going to be her. It's going to be the wife that gives the tour of that site. So that's going to be next week. But as I was talking to her, we were talking about, the church and how things are accelerating. And, I've touched on this before, and I know that this isn't a unique idea to me. I know that many of you have had this idea, but I kind of developed it a little bit more in my mind, where I really think that there is great significance to this whole thing about, the 200-year anniversary of the first vision. And as I was talking with her, I was thinking, there must be, well, I guess there doesn't have to be, but I wonder if President Nelson really emphasized the 200-year anniversary, because maybe this begins a special window of time of 200-year anniversaries. Now, I know a lot of people have been looking forward to the year 2030 in terms of like second coming timing. Part of that is because that's going to be 2,000 years from the time that Christ started his mortal ministry, which went for 3 years and then would have ended when he was 33. So kind of in that like 2030 to 2033 or maybe 2034 range. A lot of people have their eyes on that. And I think that that could be true as well. Now, that I think that the second coming can happen sooner than later, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen till then. I don't care. I'll just wait and see. But I think it's really interesting that this time in general kind of coincides with Christ's life. So we have the church, and now we're about 200 years into this from the time of the first vision, and we have all these milestones that are coming up, and then that all coincides with Christ's life and the 2,000-year anniversary of his ministry and his crucifixion and resurrection. And so this special window of time. I mean, recently Elder Stevenson talked about how the upcoming decade, meaning from 2024 to 2034, is going to be a decade never to be forgotten, right? And he listed off all these different things that are going to be happening, including all the open houses for temples, because we've had so many temples that have been announced. We have the Winter Olympics coming back to Salt Lake City. But one of those big things that he mentioned was the bicentennial of the church, which is coming up in 2030. And so I wanted to kind of get into the details of this a little bit. I may actually add this to my spreadsheets. I'm probably going to call it something like Timeline 200-year anniversaries. But these events that I'm about to list off, there may be significant things that happen in these years or associated with these events. So the first one would have been, April 2020, when we celebrated the 200-year anniversary of the first vision. So that would have been like the opening of this special window of time, if this is such a thing. Okay. The next one that's coming up, this isn't necessarily an exhaustive list, there may be other events that you could add to this. So if you have any ideas, if I miss anything, put it in the comments below. But okay, so first one, first vision. The next one, in my mind, the next big 200-year anniversary would be the 200-year anniversary from the time that Joseph Smith received the gold plates. So that was September 22nd, 1827. And so 2027 may be a special year. And it already kind of is, because that's the year that we're going to have the open house for the Salt Lake Temple. It's going to go from April until October. And we still don't have a date for the rededication itself. I mean, it's not going to happen in September on the 200-year anniversary. But from what we've seen with other temple dedications, usually after the open house is over, the dedication follows like maybe a couple weeks afterwards, maybe a month at the most. And so I feel like it's all but certain that we're going to have this dedication or this rededication in 2027. And this roughly coincides with the 200-year anniversary of Joseph Smith receiving the gold plates. So, and that's kind of perfect, isn't it? And I guess the idea with all this is maybe, if it hasn't already happened, whenever we have the grand meeting of Adamante Amen, or Christ coming to the New Jerusalem, whatever that looks like, or Christ coming to the Jews, or the final appearance, maybe it'll happen, during one of these important years. And it's kind of like, we had this that happened 200 years ago, and now this is the close of this. Does that make sense? So, for example, the reception of the gold plates, I mean, that's when we first got our hands on the Book of Mormon. We know that one of the big activities that are going to be taking place at the beginning of the millennium is the preaching of the gospel. There's going to be a lot of missionary work. In fact, I have quotes that say that that's going to be our greatest time of missionary work, is at the beginning of the millennium. So wouldn't it be fitting if the second coming, or some key event having to do with the second coming, happens in that year, the 200-year anniversary of when we got the gold plates and had our first look at the Book of Mormon? See, it's kind of poetic. So after that, we have the Aaronic priesthood that was received May 15th, 1829. And so maybe something will happen in 2029, which that would be not necessarily just for the Aaronic priesthood, but we also have the Melchizedek priesthood that came sometime after that, either in 1829 or 1830. So that's another thing to look forward to. And then, of course, 1830, which is when the Book of Mormon was published. And more importantly, that's when the church was established in this dispensation. That's going to be a huge event no matter what. Whether the second coming happens in that year or not, or one of the appearances, that's going to be a big deal. If 2020 was a big deal because of the 200-year anniversary of the first vision, then 2030 is going to be a really big deal. I did a video one time looking at what happened for the centennial of the church. There was a Hosanna shout, and there were other special things that took place. So you may want to go check out that video. But this one is going to be even bigger. There may be things that we can't even imagine right now that are going to be announced at that time. What if like a special temple is announced, or a special temple is supposed to be dedicated by that time? Like say like the Far West Temple, or a temple at Adamante Amen, or the temple here in Independence, Missouri. Anything's possible. After getting the Kirtland Temple back into the church, in my mind, and I already felt this way, that anything's possible, but really, after that happened, I feel like anything is possible. So there's just like all sorts of possibilities. Okay, now after that, there's a couple interesting ones. So we have July 20th of 1831. That's when Independence, Missouri was identified as the location for the city of Zion, or New Jerusalem, which up until this point, that vision for that city has not yet been realized. We definitely have the people here at this point, and I'm talking about members of the church, because remember, I've talked about this before, that back in those days, in the early days of the church, a stake was equivalent to a city, and a city was a stake. And the city of Zion would have been 15 to 20,000 people. That's how big it was designed for. That would have been the center stake, the center city. And, we have that. We have a stake center, or we have a stake here in Independence, the Independence stake. The people are here, but it'd be interesting if in 2031, if something actually happens, like something really significant, whether it's the start of the construction of the city, whatever that looks like. That's kind of hard for me to picture now that I live here, because there is already a city here. There's a historic downtown, and you have the main streets and everything. I don't know how that's going to play out, but what I can imagine is the construction of the temple, and or the renovation of the Independence Visitor Center into what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be one of the temples of the 24 temple complex. And I've always felt that that could be the temple that would fulfill prophecy, at least fulfill it in part. Well, no, fulfill the prophecy to where Christ could come to his temple in the New Jerusalem. You could say maybe it just has to be one of his temples, and then later on, in a natural way, the rest of the temple complex is built. But okay, so 2031, and along with that, you could say 2033, because 1833, that's when, just before the Saints were pushed out of Jackson County, that's when the plans for the New Jerusalem were drafted. There was an initial plan that was put together in, I think it was June of that year, and then there was a revision in August. And as far as I know, that is the current plan for the city of Zion, is the revised city plat of 1833. But then a few months after that, starting in, I think, October, November, that's when the Saints were pushed out of Jackson County. And that would be a fitting time for something to happen. The 200-year anniversary of the Saints being pushed out of Jackson County. Wouldn't that be poetic? Wouldn't that be poetic if that's the year that the temple is constructed, or just something? Christ comes to the New Jerusalem, or whatever. You get what I'm saying? Okay, so we got that, but I do have a few more. Let's see. Now, we have the Kirtland Temple that was dedicated March 27th, 1836. Now, we have not yet gotten to the 200-year anniversary of that, but interestingly, I calculated it was 12 years shy of the 200-year anniversary is when the Kirtland Temple came back into the church last year in 2024. And so that's maybe another way to look at this, if the Kirtland Temple is any indicator. Maybe some of these things will actually happen before the 200-year anniversary, rather than on the anniversary or the year of the anniversary. Maybe they will come, like certain things will happen before we reach these pivotal moments and anniversaries. So I think that's interesting, Oh yeah, I have the calculation right here. You can't see it, but I have it on my notes that I'm looking at. So 188 years went by that the Kirtland Temple was not in possession. Well, no, sorry, because that's from the dedication. Well, from the dedication to the time that we got it back, it was 188 years. So what if it's something like that with these other things? Okay, and then the next big thing is the fall of 1838. That's when the Saints were expelled from Missouri. Maybe that's going to be a significant date. Maybe again, some of these key things here in Missouri: a city, a temple at Adamonteamin, a city, a temple at Far West, other places, maybe Gallatin, which is near Adamonteamin, uh, who knows, things of that nature. And then we have like the Nauvoo period, and this is there's definitely going to be something really big for this. The 200-year anniversary of the martyrdom of Joseph Smith. So that's still a ways away. The next decade from now is the 2030s, and then this is going to be in the 2040s. But the 200-year anniversary of that is going to be June 27th of 2044. If I'm telling you what, if the second coming hasn't happened by then, I'm going to be very surprised. I know some of you had different opinions, but that makes me think, though. Now, think about this. There was a shared vision of John Taylor and others that are unnamed that was published in the paper there in Nauvoo. What was it called? The Morning Star? I can't remember. I don't have it pulled up. Let me know in the comments below. But in Times and Seasons, is that what it was? Times and Seasons? Okay, so in that paper, before they left Nauvoo, and after the martyrdom of Joseph Smith, there was this really detailed vision detailing certain things about the millennium, when Christ's kingdom is established, and one of the very specific details is they said that they saw there was a day set apart. I think it was April 7th of each year, April 7th, that it was the feast day of Joseph and Hiram Smith. And it was to, I can't remember. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I think it was to commemorate their martyrdom and their lives as a whole, of course. But that was like an official holiday, a feast day during the millennium. And so wouldn't it be perfect if the second coming happens before that 200-year anniversary, and then, on the feast day of Joseph and Hiram, there's like a really big one in 2044 in which there's just a huge celebration. In being able to look back, now we would have the resurrected Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith, and the Lord's kingdom is established on the earth, and the Lord has been victorious over his enemies, and now we have this paradisiacal world where he rules and reigns. And in that setting, in that context, looking back 200 years to how for a lot of people it seemed like all was lost when they were martyred, and it was just a very dark time. But skip forward 200 years and they're on top of the world and everything's okay in the way that it should be. So that's something to think about. And then the last thing that I have on my list is February of 1846. That's when the Saints started leaving Nauvoo. And, that's just another one of those special dates. So to wrap it up, there's definitely going to be things, I think, done for each of these anniversaries. For some of these anniversaries, it's going to be bigger than for others, I think. So, for example, the bicentennial of the church, that I guarantee you that's going to be huge. The other ones, I don't know, but I do feel certain that they're going to do something, whether it's like a special broadcast, like a worldwide devotional, or whether it's the announcement of a special temple or something like that. I guarantee that there's going to be something for each one of these milestones. It'll be exciting to see what it's going to be. But these were the thoughts that I had when I was at the Rush Creek site. I'm excited in the lead up to all this, just because I'm here in Independence and I'm getting all these videos. I've started to take on this like second channel where I'm really, really trying to document all these church sites, both the ones that are really well known and the ones that are lesser known, like these ones here in downtown Independence. I don't think a lot of people know about these sites here. They're smaller, but if you come to Independence and you go to the visitor center and the temple lot, just drive over here. It's only like 1 minute. Like drive 1 minute down the road, down Lexington, or Walnut or something, and just come knock these ones out too. So subscribe to my other channel. I'm doing commentary now on all my videos, and I'm going to revisit all these places time and time again. And I'm putting together a spreadsheet with the exact locations and descriptions and everything of all these places. I'm starting to kind of like formulate like what I think is the best way to see the church sites here if you want to see everything. And I think that it's the best ways to do it by counties. Anyway, but as I develop that more, I'll let you know. I found some sites in Kansas that I haven't found listed anywhere else. Like there's other foundations and stuff that put together these lists of church sites, and so far I haven't seen any that had the sites in Kansas. So I'm trying to just track them all down. And if you can't come see them yourself, then just enjoy my channel and we'll explore them together. But anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe both to Christian Homestead and also to explore church sites. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below, especially if you have any other like 200-year anniversaries that I may have missed. That would be really significant. Like this video if you liked it, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.